Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is MIKKEL THORUP, and this is the Expat Money Show. Today's guest is an American expat currently living in Spain with his wife, Allison, and their dog, Koda. And yes, I am told Koda has a passport too. He's the head of remote at Doist, a leading remote-first company and a contributor for some of the top work remote outlets in the world, such as Remote How, repeople, Future of Work, and others. After calling half a dozen countries home, Chase is passionate about making location independence the new norm and helping others step into a life beyond borders. Please welcome to the show, Chase Warrington. Chase, how are you?
Hey, MIKKEL, I'm doing great. Thanks a lot for having me.
My pleasure. I am happy to have you here. Why don't you take a minute and kind of walk us through your backstory?
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, I'm currently living here in Spain in beautiful Valencia. I landed here by accident, really, which we can get deeper into if you'd like. But I came here 4 years ago on a one-year visa, thinking I would spend 3 months in Valencia. And ultimately, I've been here for 4 years now and have kind of found a home base that I really enjoy calling home. So prior to that, I was working kind of digital nomad style for a company called Doist, where I still am today, and bouncing around different countries, spending 1 to 3 to 6 to 12 months in different places. And ultimately just decided I wanted to put roots down in some form or another, and have stayed here in Valencia. So I kind of pride myself on having a bit of balance finally that I've worked to discover, and having the career that I wanted, but also having the sense of adventure and nomadism that gives me that sense of joy still.
Amazing. Well, I want to get into your business and the work that you do and how you help people. But I guess from the beginning, like, what was it that made you want to live overseas or travel? Like, what was that spark? Where did that come from?
I think a lot like you, MIKKEL, I had this in me at an early age. I kind of like to laugh and think about it. I was born to a pilot and a flight attendant. And by the time I was 3, I believe I had traveled to I've been on 30 something different planes and traveled a decent amount. Of course, I don't remember any of that, but it makes me think it was perhaps in my DNA. But funny enough, we didn't really travel a lot growing up. We stayed continental US. I never even left the US until I was 18 years old. But as a teenager, I just had this like thirst to go see other cultures, and I would hang out. My school was very, it was very multicultural. We had a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds, and I would play hacky sack with the Colombian kids and try to go learn how to play soccer with the guys from other countries. And so it just kind of like was always something in me, but I didn't have the opportunity to go. And then as soon as I was 18, I hit the road and went down to New Zealand and Australia and got a taste of a foreign accent and new food, and all of a sudden I was like, I'm hooked. And so from there it went on to study abroads and seeking out internships abroad and studying international business, and it just kind of was like one step after another, going deeper and deeper into needing to be surrounded by people from other backgrounds. I wanted to see people that looked different and smell things that smelled different and taste things that tasted different. It never got old for me, and actually the thirst just couldn't be quenched, I guess.
Well, isn't that amazing that you can look back now and kind of connect the pieces, connect the dots of how this all happened? Because people ask me similar questions and I'm like, oh, I had no idea at the time what I was doing or how I was doing it. Now looking back, it's like, okay, everything makes sense. But, when you're going through it, it doesn't really make any sense whatsoever. Now, so here's my question. Do you think that for someone who wants to go out there and travel and be an expat or digital nomads or work remote, do you think they have to have a background like you? Do you think they have to have a parent who traveled extensively or was a pilot or something like that? Or do you think really like anyone can kind of do this stuff?
Yeah, I think people find their passions in different ways throughout life, right? And we're changing, we're constantly evolving. And I've met expats here in Spain that had zero desire to travel, never left their home country until they were in their 40s, for instance. And now they're just enjoying this stage of life in a foreign place. So I absolutely think it can be learned. And I'm still learning. And there's this like spectrum of people that have had these different experiences throughout life. And I look at people like yourself. I listened to your show and I've heard some of your experiences, and I'm like, wow, I want to do all those things one day. And then I have people talking to me who say, oh man, it's so cool. You live in Spain. I would love to go do that one day. And so there's always like some new adventure to go and learn and dive into, and it just doesn't get old.
Well, and you and I both started this at a very young age, and we're able to connect the dots. But you know what? I bet you someone who started traveling at, say, they're 40 years old, as you mentioned, they start traveling today. In a couple of years, I bet you they'll be able to look back and connect the dots of how they got there, the things in their life that led them to that situation, and all they've been able to accomplish there. So that's kind of an interesting point, that it doesn't really matter how old you are when you start. It'll all kind of make sense in the end.
I think that's true. And also something I really think that's interesting for me, and I know a lot of people who almost fell into this trap as well, is I got diverted off that trail for a little while. So although I was very passionate about traveling, I sort of thought that it was a young person's game. And when I was in university, I thought for sure this is like something I have to kind of get out of my system, because in the future, it's not going to really be an option for me. I have to go into my career, and I have to get started, and I have to have kids, and I have to, and all those things mean like going back home in your mind. And I started to venture down that path and was uncomfortable with it. And I know so many people who never then kind of divert back off that path. They just keep going, even if they didn't want to. And so I'm happy that I did, but I kind of, when I think about like my journey to this point, I kind of started from there, like almost like the other stuff was youth. And then in my late 20s, I said, hold on, I'm going down the wrong path. I'm missing that part of me that's so important, and I've got to get back to that. And so that point for me kind of starts from there, which is sort of interesting to reflect on.
See, I never fell for that. I mean, people have been telling me my entire life, oh, that's great now, do your traveling while you're young, but one day you're going to have to come back and, get a house and, get married and have kids. Well, joke's on you, because I've been traveling nonstop for 21 years and met my wife overseas, got married overseas. Both my kids are born in different countries. And you know what? It works. So, don't listen to everything that grown-ups tell you. If you want to, go out there, enjoy your life and do anything you want. I mean, as long as it is in an honest and ethical manner, then go for it. I mean, you get to create this stuff. It's your choice.
So that doesn't stop, huh? People will keep on saying that, well, get it out of your system now. Cause I'm the same. I'm 36 now. I still hear it. And I think like, how old do you think I am?
I don't get it anymore because I'm a father of two and stuff like that, but I did get it up until I think I got married and had kids. I think that's when it kind of switched. So, I mean, I was mid 30s by the time that started. That's quite a long time to be treated like a child.
It is. Yeah. It's funny. People do have sort of a path laid out for you that they think everybody's going to follow. And when you divert from it, it's interesting for people to try to swallow that pill. Like, you're going down a totally different route, but okay, let's see how long this lasts.
And that's an interesting point. So let's go down this piece a little bit, because I mean, the world is changing. The landscape of the job markets are changing, borders are changing, languages and the access to information for learning about new cultures, the internet and being able to live anywhere in the world. I mean, all of these things are changing so rapidly. Now, do you think that this mentality of people where you have to go home to do all the things that you're supposed to do in your life, do you think that mentality is going to continue? Or do you think people are going to start switching and seeing things a little bit more like you and I do?
I think it's changing rapidly. Obviously, the pandemic expedited things in a way that none of us could have foreseen. You have, tens of millions more people working online and transitioning to full-time working online, jobs that were not considered even remotely to be remote, no pun intended, are now fully remote jobs. And so I think you see people adapting to this very quickly, and what was not normal 1-2 years ago is suddenly very normal and not going away. If there's anything that organizations and individuals need to remember, is that there's no point in being nostalgic about it anymore. Like, that's not going away. We are in this new world and way of working. So I think people will adapt or have to adapt. And I think like there's some pros and cons to that. There will probably be some pains, but I think overall people are going to come around to this idea on a much more of a massive scale that, okay, I can take my life on the road with me. There's new technologies emerging. There's new services. I know you've talked about Creating schools for people that want to live a more nomadic lifestyle or want to live abroad, alternatives. And so all these things that previously kind of held us down in a way, I think there's enough critical mass there for solutions to be brought to market to solve those pain points for those people. Because a lot of us have it in us, this thirst to travel and see new countries. I talk to people every single day who are like, I can't wait to live like this. I'm so excited. And now they feel liberated and able to do so.
Well, I agree with exactly what you've said, like wholeheartedly, and have been thinking this for a very long time. But do you think that there's any roadblocks? Do you think there's any things that are going to hold people back or hold society as a whole back from embracing remote work?
I do. I think the main, what I think is going to happen is I think we're going to go through some cycles and evolutions here with remote work. So one of the big ones, what the narrative around remote has sort of changed in the last 2 years, but even since everybody went from like hitting the panic button to, okay, we got to figure out remote work and how to make this work, right? So organizations across the world and individuals are going, I don't really have a choice. I just got to figure out how to make it. Everybody get a Zoom account and a Slack account and let's figure it out. And then what that narrative has changed to now is, oh, wait, this works. We can actually do this on a massive scale. People can have their flexibility and freedom and more time with family and less commute time. There's tons of benefits here. We figured out how to kind of do it as an organization, but now we need to transition that to how do we optimize this for the long term? And so there's a big gap there from where we are now with we're still kind of hitting the panic button, figuring out how to do it, to optimizing and that's rewriting best practices. That's thinking about what tools we use. That's rethinking the way office space is used. There's so much that goes into it. So I think it'd be ridiculous to think that there's not going to be some heavy friction there. But I also think that the light at the end of the tunnel's bright enough to draw people down. And so I think we're going to roll right over those speed bumps for the most part. And I don't think there's a reverse here.
Well, and I asked this question a little bit because I was reading in the news recently that Google just acquired some of the most prime real estate in New York. I think they paid something like over $1 billion for it. All of these big companies are scooping up real estate in prime locations. And I'm like, these tech companies are buying real estate in depreciated locations, and the rest of the world has gone remote. Like, what do they know that we don't know? I mean, my business works very well remote. I mean, I'm not Google, of course. I mean, I have a very small company. There's like a half a dozen of us that work for me. But I mean, it works for us now. I'm wondering if it will continue to work, if there's things that, we should be aware of or things that we should be put into our heads now to be prepared. Because I do spend a lot of time usually going to conferences, going to summits, going to masterminds, and there's like an energy of being face-to-face with someone. Now, you and I were on Zoom right now, and the technology works perfect, and it streams, and it's, you can see me and I can see you, and it's a real conversation. And we'll sit down and we'll talk for maybe 2 hours. But that's a very different example than, your office is just down the hallway and I just come and knock on you because I have something that popped into my head that day. I mean, we set this call up probably almost a month ago, to sit down today. So it's these weird dynamics and trying to understand, the best way to go forwards, what we can change, what we can control, what we can't control, how do we moderate that, all of those types of things. So that's not really a question, but maybe a comment on it.
It's a wonderful comment because I mean, I don't claim to be Google either. They probably do know, they definitely know a lot more than I know on a lot of levels. But I do tend to think that there is no reverse to the remote trend. There just may be a tapering off in some ways, but I think more knowledge workers equals probably more of both, right? You're going to have some hybrid model set up where some people are in office, some people are remote. You're going to have some fully remote companies like the one that I work for, which is just remote first. Everybody just location agnostic, right? Like you work from wherever you want to work. And then you'll have some that stick with the fully office remote model and go that route. But I do tend to think like you just have a growing population of people that are going to demand remote work, not see it as a perk anymore. When I I never mind sharing that, when I was seeking location independence and remote work, and I made so many sacrifices. Like I kind of sacrificed the career for remote in a way, and sacrificed the big paycheck for location independence. And that was because it was a perk at the time, not like not something you expected. Like you would expect a 401k from a US based business, right? So that was not the case with it. And now it is becoming the case. And companies that don't offer 401ks and companies that don't offer remote don't seem so attractive to a lot of people. So it becomes like more of a necessity. But I'm interested to see what that office space for organizations like that, like how they use it. Does it become like the beautiful like hybrid setting where people can come and work from there? I have a friend that works at Google, and he works remote, but he loves to go to the office like 1-2 days a month. And it's perfect for him. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes.
Well, I'm thinking for my business, what I might be doing is holding like small retreats or something like this, maybe on a quarterly, maybe on twice a year or something like that. Even if I have to pay for my staff to fly over or something like that, having something in person, I think there is going to be a lot said for that. I mean, I've been remote for many years now, and I love remote. Absolutely. I mean, I have an office at home and I work from home, and that allows me so much freedom and flexibility. But yeah, it's that marrying of the two, I think, that will be interesting going forwards. And I think that the companies that have this type of a balance and understand the strengths on each, I think that they're really going to excel. I think that if you're, so indoctrinated to just one way, it's going to be challenging.
I 100% agree, MIKKEL. It's and actually one of the things I'm most excited about. I'm just migrated into this new role called head of remote at Doist, and it's about half of the role is about creating and cultivating the human element of remote work. Mm-hmm. So I'm very much so a people person. I enjoy being around humans, but I work remote. And how do I marry those two things together? Both in terms of like, not just in terms of like bringing the team together. So we do a team retreat. We have about 100 people in 35 different countries. We bring them all together in non-COVID times to a co-located place once a year. And then we do what's called mini retreats, where we bring people, like the individual teams, to a place about 6 months later. So that means every 6 months you're in a co-located place with your teammates. But not just from that standpoint. There's also ways to cultivate that human element in virtual settings and asynchronous settings even, and also via like the way you offer your perks and benefits. We offer like, for instance, I go to a co-working so I can be surrounded with other people, and the company pays for that. We reimburse people to go travel if they want to go meet up with one of their teammates. So there's ways companies can do this. They can still take all the benefits of remote and then give back the sort of sacrifice, which is the human part.
So how have you found remote workplaces? This is not something that I have a lot of experience with myself. Like I said, I always do the home office. I'm curious, like, what's your opinion? I've heard negatives, I've heard positives, I've heard there's a lot of drinking and partying afterwards. I don't know. What do you think?
I think probably everything you've heard can be very true. And for the most part, I'm not a huge fan of co-working places, like co-working spaces. Like I found one here in Valencia that I absolutely love. I have a dedicated desk. These are some key differentiators. I have a dedicated desk. So my monitors are there. I have pictures of my family, and it's mine. I go there and it's like my place where I go to do work. So as opposed to some other places where, you walk in and you have to find a desk every day and you're packing and unpacking, and maybe you have to meet the new person next to you every day because that person's constantly changing, or the people around you change. Sometimes it's loud, sometimes it's not. At the place that I've found that works for me, it's almost like a regular office. There's 40 people all at their dedicated desk, all doing their own individual things. We respect each other's space. And that works a lot. And then there is the social element. Yeah, we occasionally do a paella rooftop party or a sangria making class or something like that. Which, especially when you first move somewhere and into a foreign country, it was the source of my social life. Actually, I mean, my wife and I moved here and we didn't know anybody, and it became the source of our social life. And some of our best friends to this day we met in the co-working. So it worked out well in this case. But I've tried plenty that I did not like.
Yeah. So I think that you've hit some important points on there. having your own space for sure, I think would be a huge plus. I mean, I'm kind of the worst digital nomad. I can't just take a laptop and just like pull it out at the middle of an airport and just start working. I mean, I've got a second screen, I've got a proper keyboard and a mouse, I've got like a whole ton of computer equipment. I mean, right now where I'm recording this, I have 3 monitors in front of me. They're 24 inches. They're up on a stand. You know, I've got my podcasting gear. I have my expensive microphone. I mean, the whole kit and caboodle. Okay, yes, I live and I travel and I do all of these things, but I take a lot of it with me. But when I set up in an Airbnb or something like that, I mean, that's my desk for the next month, you know, and there I'm there, you know. If I had to unpack every day, oh my God, I'd shoot myself. Like I tip my hat tips to anybody who can just work like on the drop of a hat. I need my environment in a certain fashion, I suppose.
I'm no different. I'm a creature of habit, which doesn't and routine, which doesn't jive well with the digital nomad lifestyle. And I thought I was one for a little while, but I kind of suffered through that. I mean, I thought, oh, I love to travel. I have location independence. Cool. Marry those two together and hit the road. But I didn't have my routine. I didn't have the setting for me to thrive in all aspects of life. And I think that's really taken for granted sometimes when you see really cool Instagram pictures of laptops on beaches with cocktails next to them. You know, it's that works for some people, but for a lot of us that sort of have a regular career or something that you're trying to do most days, it's really hard to have some consistency. And so I just returned from 6 weeks of travel. We have a camper van and we went on a 6-week trip through the Alps and circled back down through Spain. And it was fantastic, but I was working for 70% of the time. And I was reminded I'm a horrible digital nomad. I want my office back. I want my studio back. So, yeah.
I understand that completely. I mean, I go back and forth between calling myself a digital nomad, non-digital nomad. If you guys have listened to this show, you probably say, I'm not a digital nomad. I'll never declare myself a digital nomad. And then a couple weeks later, I'm like, well, I'm kind of a digital nomad. I mean, that's why I use Expat. That's why this is the Expat Money Show. This is not the Digital Nomad Money Show. Because I like the convenience. I like the comfort of having all of my stuff. And yes, I've done large trips in my life where, you know, I backpacked and hitchhiked for 18 months straight and go. But, you know, at almost 40 years old, you know, things have slowed down a little bit, but I still travel a lot. Like I considered myself a digital nomad when I lived in Brazil. I was just there for 6 months. I was in 4 or 5 different Airbnbs over a 6-month period. But every time, even if I was there only for like 3 weeks or a month, I would set up a proper desk. I would work from there. I mean, I wasn't there like 3 days, you know, and nonstop moving. You know, and we got a big trip planned next year where we're going to spend, I think, 3 months in Eastern Europe. And I'm super excited about that, but I'm going to have to work the entire time. And that'll be digital nomad, but I'll still figure out a way to bring all my creature comforts with me.
Good for you for like marrying it together though. I mean, like not a lot of people do both. It's kind of like one or the other. I like your style of going from kind of having a home base. And this is what I've sort of tried to work towards as well, as like, I'm about 8 months in one place here in Valencia, and then scattered throughout the year, about 4 months in a handful of different places. And I generally like to be somewhere for at least a month. But you know, 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, somewhere in that range. And so I like the way you've modeled it. I'm curious, what would be the shortest amount of time you would consider hitting the road, like family, work, everything?
Well, usually I get invited to speak internationally. So I've probably spoken, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 different countries around the world. So usually organizations will fly me out. And then if they're not paying for me to speak, they're only paying the travel, then sometimes I'll get them to fly my family out with me as well. So that's a nice perk. So maybe we'll go for, 2 weeks to a country. I'll speak every day for a couple of days straight, as a keynote. And then we'll tag a vacation onto that, and then fly back. I mean, the other big thing is I have a home base. I mean, I have a nearly 500 meter square penthouse apartment in downtown Panama. It's 2 stories, 470 square feet. It's a huge place. It's fully furnished. I mean, this is my home. We are in the process of buying a couple of other houses around the world. So I'll use those as home bases as well. And that's kind of where we base a lot of our travel out of. Because you have to understand, a family of 5 is kind of different than just traveling, solo. So you have to think a little bit ahead with like kids and toys and bathing suits and all kinds of stuff that, when I was in my earlier years, I just didn't need to think about. But I mean, I keep making it work. And this is kind of a circle back to our previous topic about, do you have to grow up and go home to do these types of things? It's like, no, I'm just constantly modifying and staying up to date and being flexible and changing things as my life change, because I will never stop traveling. COVID, war, I don't know what's going on in the world right now. I'm going to keep traveling.
The big one that was funny for me was when I got a dog and people said, "Oh, you're going to stop. You'll have, you'll definitely stop now." And he's a Siberian Husky. So he's not like a little lap dog. And it's just funny now you mentioned this when we first started. I mean, he does have a pet passport and, which is super cute on one hand, but also really funny because he's crisscrossed the equator and the Atlantic multiple times. And I think he knows a couple different languages, at least, sit and stay and stuff. And so anyway, it was just really funny when I think back on that. People said, "Oh, well, kids or dog, you're done. You're staying put." And I said, "Watch this."
Yeah. And if you go back far enough, people would say that, okay, but to have a career, you're going to have to go back home. To have a proper job, to earn a proper income, you're going to have to go back and to your hometown or a major city. Well, who's laughing now? I mean, look what you're doing. Look at what so many of our listeners here are doing. I mean, there is options. It's just a matter of being flexible.
It is. Yeah. And being intentional, I think, as well. Like people will say like, "Oh, I wish I could do what you're doing, or that looks like so much fun. Like, I wish I could do that." And then just, if you center your attention for me, and I think for you, it was all about like flexibility, location independence. Like I put that at the center of everything. And I said, I will sacrifice some of the potpourri around that, but this is what I truly want. And I'll figure out the rest. When I took a 50% pay cut to have pure location independence, finally, I said, I'll figure it out. I had to adjust my spending and redo my budget and all that, but it worked out. And the career's back on track. Like, I think these things take care of themselves if you stay true to who you are. And it might sound like a little bit cliche, but I really feel that inside me. It's worked out that way for me. And so many people that I meet who are also living similar lives, like that's kind of the red thread that ties them all together.
Well, how do you feel when someone tells you, "Oh, you're so lucky to do this, Chase, you're so lucky"? How do you feel when someone says that to you?
It's not a great feeling, because it's sort of like what is the proper response to that, And I just always think the same options are available to most people. It would not be correct to say to everybody, because there are some restrictions and some people are not afforded the same opportunities, but in general, the people that I would be having that conversation with generally had the same opportunities. So if they truly wanted it, they could have it too. So I always struggle with that when someone says that. I always wonder, like, I don't know what to say to you. I don't know if you have a good answer, because I know you get it as well.
I get it all the time. And I used to get it even more when I still associated with people who don't really travel. Now, I think most of my network is all location independent digital nomads, expats, professionals who have their businesses or work in the offshore space. But I mean, luck kind of discounts, for me, all the hard work that has gone into this, being purposeful, like you said. Like, I mean, I wasn't lucky. I mean, I was born with a learning disability and dropped out of school when I was 12 years old. I mean, right. You guys call me lucky. Wow, thanks. That's amazing. I worked my ass off to get to where I am, 24 hours a day to do the things that I'm doing right now. Luck did not play a part in it. I didn't win the lottery. My family was not wealthy. We didn't have any of that kind of stuff. So I think that people have to understand that really what it comes down to is sacrifice. I mean, if you make a sacrifice in your life to get the things that you want, well, then you're going to be propelled forwards. And if you decide that everything is out of your control and you need to wait for that golden lottery ticket, well, then probably nothing is ever going to happen for you. For me, personal responsibility is so massively important. I mean, I create my own destiny, my dreams, my family situation, my life, all of these things. I created it. I built it with my own two hands. And to say someone is lucky for that, I don't know. I don't know about that at all.
I agree with you. You said it much better than I could, but I could not agree with you more. And I know in the community that you have around the show, I would imagine there's a lot of people that feel the same because it is the Expat Money Show. There's people in this network and in your community that have a thirst for or a knowledge of the business environment, wealth, the things that it might take to actually create a quote unquote real life while also incorporating the expat, digital nomad, life abroad sort of thing. And so they know that it takes some effort, it takes some sacrifice, it takes some investment in learning. And, I joke, like, just the simplest thing of renewing my visa here in Spain is something that most people probably don't want to do. It's not a lot of fun. It's kind of a pain, but like it's what serves the lifestyle that I want to live. So I'm willing to go through with it and make that sacrifice. It can be expensive, time consuming. It can feel like you're beating your head against a wall, but these are the things you have to do to live this life. And as you said, quote unquote, get lucky.
Yeah. Well, I think that bureaucratic work is no fun. I mean, I do a ton of work in immigration stuff and I hate working with governments, but I mean, I want to travel. Like we said, I want to have multiple passports and, have the opportunity to live and work in different places. So it's like, I mean, you either play the game or you don't play the game, but I mean, sitting around and complaining about it's not going to help anybody. So, but Spain, I have heard that Spain immigration, Spain bureaucrat, and the tax situation there is pretty rough, pretty arduous.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's like comically bad sometimes. And I've done the visa process in other places, but it's the thing that unites all the agencies is that the information's just always out of date. And so there's just nothing is ever consistent. Offices get closed and moved. And, there's just, and I don't think that's unique to Spain necessarily. It's probably true in a lot of places, but there's a big expat community here. And it's a common joke that in the mail system.
Well, let's talk about Spain a little bit because I've been to Spain. I've traveled through there. I've ate the food. I met the people. I had a great, great experience. What's it like living as an expat there?
Well, I will also give a little bit of context. So I came to Spain after traveling through a couple times as well and had explored a lot of it, particularly the South, and I loved the country, but I hadn't found my place yet in the country. I really liked being down in Andalusia in the South and the pure culture. I mean, that is like it's like if you're in the US and you go to Texas, you're like, okay, that's what I envisioned when I thought of Texas. That's Andalusia in Spain. So I'd spent a lot of time down there. I really loved it. It was fun. It was like great places to visit, but I couldn't find the place where I would want to live. And my wife and I were looking for a place to come. We wanted to come to Europe and we were hoping to just come spend a year in Europe and not have to bounce in and out of the Schengen. So we found this visa that Spain said, you can come, you can live in Spain for 1 year. And it seemed like it would all work out. So we said, okay, we'll go. We asked a couple Spanish friends, where do you guys think we should live? And we kept hearing Valencia. But we had not been to Valencia and we didn't really know what to expect from Valencia. But when we were in the consulate, they said, hey, you have to decide right now. You're getting your visa, but tell us where you're living. So we picked Valencia kind of on a whim, having never been here. And we thought we would come spend 3 months here and then move on to a couple other places. But what I came to really find out, we got to Valencia and we just felt right at home, like immediately. Big enough city to kind of have everything. It's about 1 million people. So a mid-tier US city that feels like it has everything, but at the same time, super bikeable, bike lanes all throughout. It's one of the most bikeable cities in Europe. So you don't need a car, just bike through the whole city. Big, beautiful park right on the Mediterranean, big international airport to fly all over Europe for super cheap. And then it's also it doesn't have the prices of Madrid or Barcelona. So it felt like a really nice mix for us. And so I say all that because one thing about Spain that I think is very unique is that it's very, very regionalized. They have either 4 or 5, I can't remember, 4, I think it's 5 individual official languages. They have 2 different like states essentially that want to segregate from the country as a whole. It's very unique depending on where you live. And it borders on 3 oceans. or three seas at least. There's the Pyrenees Mountains and the Mediterranean beaches. So it's just so diverse in a relatively small place that it's like I can drive a couple hours in one direction and feel like I'm in a totally different country. And so that for me is like one of the things that I really love about living here, is that I legitimately feel like I'm living in a couple different places. And Valencia feels like such a different place than Madrid or Andalusia or Galicia or whatever part of the country you want to go to. So that's kind of like the glue that keeps holding me here, I guess.
Amazing. And so most of your friends that you've met there, they're Spanish, they're expats, they're digital nomads, foreigners, locals. What's the mix there?
I would say about 75% Spanish and 25% expat, and most of those expats coming from other European countries. There's a lot of Dutch here in Valencia in particular. There's like 23 flights a day between Valencia and the Netherlands. So you have a lot of Dutch here, and there's not a ton of Americans in Valencia. There's not a ton of, we have some Australian friends, some British friends as well. But yeah, it's got a very local feel. Like when you should speak Spanish here, for instance. Like it's not one of the cities where, just speaking on Valencia in particular, it's not one of the cities where if you don't speak any Spanish, you're going to be 100% comfortable. You should be able to speak some Spanish. You'll get by without it, but it feels important to have Spanish. That's not the case in a lot of European major cities. You can walk in and speak English just fine. So, but there is an expat community, but I'm not super tapped into it necessarily, but it's there for people that crave it.
And your language ability, did you speak Spanish before you arrived? Did you learn while you're there? Are you still English only? What's the language situation like?
I speak conversationally in Spanish. I'm not fluent. I struggle with some of the technicalities of like switching to subjunctive and back and forth between different tenses. But I have the way I phrase it is I have Spanish friends that don't speak English, and we have very deep conversations and true friendships in Spanish. So I feel totally comfortable in Spanish, but also, like, for instance, I got offered to do an interview today in Spanish, very like kind of professional work based. And I didn't feel 100% comfortable doing that.
And so did you say yes, or you said no? You did it and felt uncomfortable?
I said no, gracias. We switched to English. The guy spoke like fluent English, and I was like, yeah, this is going to be a lot better experience for everyone in English. So yeah, I'm in that realm. And I didn't speak much before I came here. I'd digital nomaded through Latin America and tried to pick up some there, particularly in Ecuador. But the difference between Spanish in Ecuador and Spanish in Spain is like Scottish and Texan. It's just totally two different opposite ends of the spectrum. So I could count, do some pleasantries, say hello, things like that. But I settled into it when I got here.
Nice one. Well, I think the language is really important, especially if you're going to live there for 4 years. I mean, yeah, you kind of have to learn the language. I mean, people keep telling me, it's okay. Google Translate works everywhere. And I'm like, yes, technically you might be able to, get yourself understood or communicate with someone. But what a barrier to have to work through using technology at all times. I mean, there's so much personality and heart that comes through in a language where you're really not going to get that by just using your phone as a translation app.
Yeah, absolutely not. How do you feel? I know your Spanish is pretty good, but how about like in particular in Panama? Like, do you feel? Because I know it's got the close ties with America. A lot of a business from the U.S. is done there. Do you feel? Is it necessary to speak Spanish, or do you feel like it's like a nice bonus that you learned it?
I think that it's very easy to survive here without speaking any Spanish whatsoever, but probably you would guess I'm not interested in just surviving. I mean, I at all times am looking to thrive. So I've worked very hard on my Spanish over the last couple of years. I mean, a lot of private tutors, a lot of courses. If you guys have listened to the show for any length of time, check out Ollie Richards' course. If you guys go to expatmoneyshow.com/language, you're going to be able to find those programs. I've used them. My spouse has been using them. My mother's used them. We've all had really great luck with it. So yeah, I think that in Panama, you can get by with English only, and you'll get surprised at times when people do speak English. Sometimes you'll be in an Uber or something like that. I'll be chatting away with my wife in English, and then all of a sudden, the guy will ask a question for directions, and he turns around and speaks perfect English. I'm like, maybe I should have been a little bit more careful. Was I talking about something private? So you can't assume that people don't speak English here. But even a little bit of Spanish will go a long way. It's good to have, and you can pick it up as you go. But I think that what happens a lot of times is someone moves to a new country, finds their expat bubble, and then stays within that. And then maybe they might be able to say, they want, agua con gas or something, and pollo, and then that's just it. Like they can order their food, but to have a real conversation or to understand, full sentences, they're really gonna struggle on that. I mean, at this point in my Spanish, I can sit down with a group of Panamanian friends and, go out for drinks and have dinner and converse completely in Spanish, tell jokes and laugh and things. All right. If I go to the bank and we're talking about, business accounting information or large wire transfers and, business Spanish, okay, I might be appreciative if the banker I'm working with works in English, or, going through immigration work. I mean, okay, I work with someone locally who helps do the immigration work for my company for people wanting to relocate to Panama. I mean, those people are bilingual. Even when I go through the process, I want to make sure I know exactly what's being said, because there's repercussions if you get it wrong. If you're out having beers and eating chicken, like my example, I mean, it's like, well, you got it wrong. Big deal. You laugh.
You messed up the joke. The punchline was off, whatever.
Exactly. You're not going to get like expelled from the country or something, or, your $500,000 wire transfer to buy a place is not going to go to the wrong account. Like, I mean, It's an example, but I mean, you want to make sure this stuff is real, like it's true, and you got it correct. So that's my, my perspective on Spanish in Panama, I suppose.
You touched on something there that I think is like really important for people considering a move abroad, and I would certainly say so for Spain, is hiring a professional, a big fan of like just outsourcing your weaknesses. What are you not great at? What's going to soak up a lot of your energy that you can pay somebody else to do? And that's a solid investment, I think. And I know you're of a similar mindset in that way. And for anybody listening that has an interest in Spain, I would 100% say that is worth every penny. It's relatively cheap. And also, I just went through my third visa entry process, and I thought we could do it on our own this time because we've been through it twice. And we got 6 months into it, 80% of the way there, couldn't get past some red tape, eventually had to hire somebody anyway. So it's just worth it. There's several groups, and if anybody wants to reach out to me, if they're interested in Spain, I can point you in the right direction with a couple throughout Spain. Yeah.
Working with local representation is always a big bonus, especially when it's in a foreign language that you don't fully understand. So on the note, though, of immigration, what visa are you on? I mean, we know about the Spanish Golden Visa, but what type of visa would you have to apply for 3 times?
Yeah. So I did not use the golden visa. I did not have €500,000 in my bank account. So that was not an option to me, though. If you do have €500,000 in the bank account, that is a great way to go. Probably the easiest. But in my case, I'm on what I guess I've never thought about this, but it's on the opposite end of the spectrum as far as that goes. It's called the non-lucrative visa, which means like make no money visa.
Oh,
and
wow.
Essentially what
Sounds
it's designed
really attractive.
for. Yes. The Expat Money Show people are going to love this. So no, what it's essentially designed for originally years and years ago was designed for pensioners and retirees. So if you had a fixed income coming from another country, you could come and live here and stay and just renew the visa. As long as you're investing money in the economy and you're not taking a job, you're not allowed to work. That's the big kicker with this one. But if you're working remotely from, your income's coming from another country, then obviously it applies to you too. So you just have to prove a couple things like fixed income, showing bank records of continuous deposits and access to funds if needed, health insurance, that you're not crazy, that you're not a criminal, yada, yada, yada. And you're allowed to come to Spain. The kicker, though, is that they are introducing a digital nomad visa as we speak. which is designed for knowledge workers and remote workers. The non-lucrative obviously was not. It was just old and happened to apply to the new way of working. But they're trying to introduce a new digital nomad visa, which is great in a way because it's designed for the actual use case that someone like myself is in. And a lot of people here, I know tons of people on the non-lucrative here in Spain that are working remotely like I am. But so everybody was really excited when he said, okay, we're going to have an actual visa for us now. But they've done it. They've not gone about it in the right way. A lot of people think they're trying to basically milk remote workers for money very quickly, rather than seeing it as like, hey, let's get more people here and let them spend their money. So it's a work in progress, so I say all that to say, if you're considering following in my lead, that could change very, very soon.
Okay. And so with the non-lucrative work visa, you actually have a job where you work for a company. And I know you're very passionate about the company you work for and things like that. But for someone who has their own company, can they pay themselves a salary and work for the company that they own and still qualify for something like this? Or does it have to be, where you're working for a company where you don't have a controlling interest on?
No, as you said, yeah, freelance. Most of the people I know are actually freelancers or self-employed. What would be like a 1099 in the US? That's what they are here. And in fact, I am as well. Like I'm self-employed and my company hires me on a full-time basis, but I'm my own entity, as are my other colleagues all around the world. So it's
that's an amazing way to do it. And one that I started doing with my staff, years ago now. I mean, when I try to explain it to someone, it's kind of like this. And I guess this is kind of my briefing when I start working with someone else. Listen, I am not your boss. I'm actually your client. You don't work for me. I work for you. Like, this is a completely different relationship. You might have only one client, and that client is me, and all of your time is going to be dedicated on this, but I don't tell you what to do. Your job is to actually make me happy and to add value. So if I pay you $50,000 a year, you're actually supposed to make me $150,000 a year. And having this shift in the mindset of people that you work with is really, really good, because they're constantly trying to make sure that they don't lose their one and only client. They're going to be pretty crummy business people if they get one client and they lose that client, So I think that this is a good way to do it. And it's interesting, even with a company like yours, where there's 100 people, they're actually using this similar type of mindset. I think you get a lot more dedication, a lot more personal responsibility. People will see, their experience. I don't know how to say, I think they'll be more thankful for their experience, opposed to looking at it like, wow, their boss is making all this money and, just milking my hard work and things like that. It's like, no, actually, they're your client. You went out and got them. So be thankful for them.
Yeah, it makes them like stakeholders in the whole thing, right? They're their own, they're actually the business and you're a customer and they just want to make you happy. And so that they can keep their business thriving. And it kind of turns the whole thing upside down. And I personally like the approach a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would think that this is going to catch on even more. And it fits so perfectly in with the remote work. Now, earlier you were talking about 401ks and things like this. I mean, I don't provide 401ks for my employees. I don't know if I should be saying this live online, but I mean, I pay my people very well, and it's their responsibility to go out and pay their appropriate taxes to, contribute to whatever they need to contribute to. And that's theirs. They run their own business and I am their client. Makes things a lot easier as a business owner, I'll tell you that.
It does. And this is, I talked about that like evolution of remote work and sort of one of the reasons that a position like mine, head of remote was not a director of remote work advocate, whatever. There's a bunch of them out there. This didn't exist very long ago, and it's one of these it's one of the reasons that it does exist is to kind of take this next step in the evolution of how to make remote work function for teams. So for us, for instance, like providing 401ks, that sounds great for our American employees, but what about the ones that live in China or the ones that live in Italy? Or they're like, why would I need a 401k? That does nothing for me. Or how do you get enough critical mass in one country to provide health insurance plans for everybody. And what about the ones who say, I pay 58% taxes, so I have health insurance covered. I don't need that. So these are all relatively new problems that, if you're not a mega corporation with an enterprise level, if you've got a dozen employees or 100 employees or 500 employees, you probably have some of these pain points, and you're now trying to figure out how to solve them and still gain access to all the talent in the world and let people work from where they want to work from. There are real problems. These are those friction points that are, kind of going to be the things that I'm trying to help solve for our organization and hopefully for others. So for me, it's a lot of fun. It's like that's the challenge, and that's the exciting part.
So if someone's listening to this today and they're facing some of these problems, what are the things that you've had to overcome? What could someone learn based off of your experiences?
Yeah. So there's a lot to digest, because there's the very interesting thing is that because there's this critical mass of companies that have gone remote now, following that, there is a supply of products and services being delivered to solve those pain points. So before, there just weren't enough remote first companies to really worry about how do you hire 100 different people in 35 different countries. Like, really, how do you go about doing that? Because there's employment contracts, and in certain places you have to. What happens if someone slips and falls at home in Uzbekistan? What are the laws like there? So you have to consider these things, but there wasn't enough critical mass for people to really be concerned with it. And now there is. And so people are developing products and services and coming up with ways to solve these things. So one of them is the title of the companies, or the area that they work in, is called employer of record. And I'm sure you're familiar with that, but basically these companies that are emerging to help other companies hire all around the world and go through all the logistics and steps that they need to do it legally in each country. And then on top of that, perhaps provide medical insurance, health insurance, 401ks, investment plans, childcare, things that would be normal to somebody in their individual country. So this is just one of the things that is emerging, and that somebody could look into to say, how do I solve those needs? An employer of record would be one of those.
Okay. I've worked with programs like Upwork for years and years and years, and found a lot of my people, and I've found some really fantastic people, and I've found some really terrible people over the years working on there. It's been kind of throwing a dart at a dartboard kind of thing. And, maybe you get lucky, maybe you don't. I don't know. Any tips on working with remote workers to make sure you're getting a bullseye more often than not?
Yeah. I think so much of it starts with when you're hiring remote workers, you need to be looking for a couple things. One of them is excellent written communication. And that might seem very obvious, but really imagine trying to work with someone that you're going to communicate with 99% of the time. Maybe you do an interview with them face to face over Zoom, and you think, oh, this is great. We really get along well. But how much have you dissected their written communication? Because that's how you're going to do 99% of your communication. And I've interviewed some amazing people. I've looked at incredible resumes and CVs and cover letters. And then when you get into actually working together, you go, I cannot read this writing for every single day for the rest of this year. It's too all over the place. So you're looking for people that are succinct but thorough, that know how to get a point across in as few words as possible, who are go-getters and ones that can, set their own schedule, manage their own expectations. They don't need to be handed a lot of tasks. They need to be handed objectives and deliverables, and then trusted to run with them. And so I think a great way to test this ahead of time is to do a test project. It's something that has helped me move from hiring lots of bad freelancers to lots of good ones, is offering a test project, offering to pay for it as well, and seeing how that goes before moving forward. So we'll often do a blanket test project across 3 or 4 people that should take between 4 to 6 to 8 hours of work, and then see how that work comes back. And that's been very successful. Well worth the investment. So is that like a probation
period where you'd actually bring them on, explain everything, and then they would do the project, and then if they did well, you keep them? Or it's like, this is part of your, I don't know how to say, like, this is
the
a
interview
test, you know, like a written exam.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
It's an interview. It's part of the interview process.
Okay.
So basically what we do, and so I've seen as the trend across a lot of remote first organizations is that this has become part of the hiring process. It wasn't for us for a long time. We used to go kind of a more traditional route of, you know, cover letter, CV, interview 1, interview 2, offer kind of thing. And we inserted the test project early on. And we're not alone in doing that. And it's paid so many dividends. And so you don't do it at the first stage because you'd end up spending a lot of money on hundreds of candidates perhaps. But in our case, you know, you filtered through and gotten through one interview and we think, okay, we've got something here. Then we want to see how the work performs and you know, the time frame that they can get it done in and things like that. But we're a very asynchronous first organization. So we don't expect a lot of quick communication. We're more about like, hey, you have this deliverable we need by the end of next week. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'll expect it in a week. And we don't need to chit chat about it a lot in between. And so we approach the test project the same way.
Okay. So give me an example of what a good test project would be, and give me an example of one which would be a lousy test project. Because I'm already thinking like, this might be a good idea for my business. I might snake this.
So we hired an amazing community manager to manage all our social accounts, social media and beta community and things like that. And we basically just simply asked we asked the candidates that were at this stage to create a content calendar for the next month. So they could take that and run with it just as if I was actually their boss. And I said, hey, I need a content calendar for next month. And it was very quick and easy to see which ones would shine and which ones wouldn't. The one that just blew us out of the water had actually created all these images, gone above and beyond, created images, written out all the captions, researched hashtags, and just went and created this beautiful doc that she shared with us and said, that's our person. Like, let's expedite the rest of this. We've already seen what we can get from her. So, doing something that's very practical, but also should take like no more than half a day to 1 day of real work is kind of preferable.
Okay. Amazing. Yeah. Because I think if, you know, they come back a week later, it's like, here, I put 30 hours into this. It's like,
right.
You know, it might be good work, but you know, you can't accomplish these types of things and within a deadline, or, you know, you're paying on, I don't know how you guys pay, if it's on salary, if it's on hourly or project task based, but I mean, and the things could end up costing you 5 times as much or be 5 times as slow. So giving that type of a window, you know, this should take you between 4 and 6 hours. Here it is, you know, talk to you tomorrow.
Very important.
Yeah.
Very important. Yeah. You have to set that expectation. And we always say, like, you could lie to us. You could say, you know, it took you 30 hours, but we said it should take 4 to 6. If it took you 30 hours, it's not going to work out well in the end. So like, don't save yourself the headache and just be honest with us. And I'm sure, you know, that doesn't always work out exactly like that, but generally we have a pretty incredible 97% retention rate. So when we get the right people in, we don't tend to lose them very, very easily. So I think that the hiring process has worked out.
Amazing. So, okay. So next, I'm kind of curious about technology. I mean, we mentioned before we're talking on Zoom, you know, you mentioned Skype earlier. Is there any technology out there that people should be taking advantage of, or technology that you think is maybe like up and coming, something in the future that will become a norm, or something that's going to shortcut the process when you're working with people around the world for your business?
There is, and there's some of me that's going to be biased in this, so I'm going to call that out completely to try to mask any tendency towards just plugging our company's own products, because it's not just about our products. It's more about a way in which remote teams are communicating. And I used this word earlier, asynchronous communication, but this is really like the cornerstone of how most remote and hybrid teams, the location agnostic teams, function, is they're moving from a synchronous situation where we're all in the same place, we're talking face to face, where chat, even instant chat, you know, where you expect an instant response. That's synchronous communication, the antithesis of asynchronous communication. So tools that lend themselves to asynchronous communication are the next step. And technically any tool other than being face to face could probably be asynchronous. You and I could chat back and forth in Zoom if we really needed to, or in Google Hangouts or Google Meet or something. There's the old AIM. You can use that asynchronously and not expect an immediate response. But there's tools that lend themselves to that better. And this is emerging not just in like the written form, but also in ways like video, for instance, products like Loom, Cloud App. There's a new tool out that I love called Yak that does voice asynchronous communication. So you're basically sending voice notes back and forth, but it also transcribes them. So you can actually have a searchable history. So imagine if you have a team of 100 spread across the world and you're sending voice notes back and forth, that could get a little messy. But with transcription and really good transcription, you can actually search for any comment that's been made. So these are all evolving, and the thing that ties them together is that they are asynchronous in nature. Our company built a product called Twist, which is a team communication tool for remote teams in particular. We actually built it for ourselves because we were annoyed by Slack. We were running on Slack and we were like, this is great for like chit chat and writing back and forth and instant messaging. But for a team that's, when I wake up in the morning and I've got 700 Slack messages because my team in Asia has been working all night, that's not a great way to start my day. And we're also a productivity company. So we're real big productivity nerds. And like, we're losing like 2 hours a day each, multiply this out. This is bad business. So we built Twist with asynchronous communication in mind and remote teams in mind. And that's what we've been running off of. And now we sell it to other remote teams. And so again, the core of it is like, it's just everything centered around asynchronous communication. And I'm seeing that evolve with other tools as well.
Well, for my company, it was emails. We had email going back and forth, like hundreds of emails of threads. And then we moved over to Telegram. And now I have different Telegram threads for everything. And that's working at the moment. But I'm kind of wondering, as my company grows and moves to the next stage and we start, we're hiring more and more people, it's like, are we going to outgrow these types of things that we already have? Is there technology out there that's going to give us an advantage? It's really interesting to see. And as you said earlier in the program, COVID has really sped up a lot of these types of things because maybe it was just a small subsection of the entrepreneurial space who was using this. Now it's like everybody needs to know how to use these things. So it's like jumped us ahead maybe 6, 7, 10 years. So it is really interesting to see about the different ways that people handle problems.
It's totally fascinating. And you hit the nail on the head. I think that most estimates show it expedited things by about 10 years, which is mind blowing. 10 years, like when did the iPhone come out? Like imagine the world without the iPhone. There's just technology just moved at such a rapid pace in a time where things are already moving at a rapid pace. It really is pretty incredible, whether you're like into that world or not. It's just when you kind of step back and look at it, you go, wow, things really moved quickly here, and entire industries are completely flipped upside down and new products and services emerging. And it's very fascinating.
Brilliant. Chase, I love it. Amazing conversation. I love today. Amazing. If my listeners want to find out more about what you do, if they want to follow along, where can we send them?
Yeah, please follow along on LinkedIn is the best place to connect with me professionally. Again, it's Chase Warrington. I'm not a great social citizen otherwise in my personal life, but I do try to share a bit on my Instagram at DC Warrington and on Twitter as well. I'm a rekindled Twitter user as of recently, trying to get back out there a little bit and learn from others. So that's the best place to find me. And I'm always happy to talk any of the things that we discussed here today, whether it be Spain or life abroad or remote work. I'm always in.
Brilliant. I love it. Thanks, Chase. And I will talk to you soon.
Thanks, MIKKEL.
Cool, buddy.